Welcome back to Untested Builds, where we figure out how to play as your favorite fictional characters in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Subscribe and tap the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video, and comment below to suggest your favorite fictional characters, and join the Patreon to vote in like half a dozen open polls. No new poll this week because this is a special Halloween video, and we're building one of my favorite fictional characters instead. Today we're getting another step closer to actually finishing a team on this channel, and it's the first one we started way back in episode 7 by building Klaus Hargreeves from the Umbrella Academy. He's got the most inherently spooky power out of all of the siblings, so he's a perfect way to close out my favorite month of the year. For our goals for this build, our main thing is being able to talk to the dead, as long as we haven't heavily imbibed any illicit substances recently, that is. Second, we're part of an exclusive club alongside Deadpool and Lobo, as comic book characters too troublesome to be able to actually die. Still to be determined if old age is going to change up that pattern, but for now, our soul keeps getting pushed back whenever we try to cross to the other side. And third, occasionally, we're able to get ourselves together long enough to actually do some manifesting the spirits of the dead to fight on our behalf, that is. For our stats, we're starting with 18 charisma, whether it's bringing people to our side or pushing them away, it's our words that tend to get the job done. 14 constitution, we store all of our extra HP in our liver. 14 dexterity, sleight of hand is one of our more pedestrian abilities. 14 intelligence, we weren't exactly the most studious child, but a bit of that private education had to rub off somewhere. 10 wisdom, inebriation doesn't usually lend well to passive perception. And 10 strength, we may be number 4, but we're definitely 7th likely to throw a punch. For our skills, we're legendary in athletics, that's a surprise tool that will help us later. Legendary diplomacy, we're the only sibling with an actual entourage. Even movie star Allison can't make that claim. And legendary spirit lore, we don't usually devote many skill increases to lore skills, but this one was pretty on brand, seeing as how in his world, he's likely the only person who can talk to ghosts at all. And training in acrobatics, deception, medicine, society, and thievery, call it the wandering son becomes a soldier, becomes a cult leader package. I'm still running on the theory that the Hargreeves and all the other children born that day are not human, at least not fully, so we're going half-elf for low light vision and access to elf and half-elf ancestry feats, in addition to the boring human ones, like sociable for training in diplomacy and the hobnobber skill feat, so we can gather information on exploration in half the usual amount of time. We may not have the raw detective skills of Diego or 5, but we have our own way of helping out. We'll take the charlatan background for training in deception and underworld lore, and the charming liar feat, so whenever we critically succeed on a lie action, we improve the listener's attitude towards us by one step, as if we succeeded at making an impression. We usually just BS our way through social interactions anyway, so no need to fix what's not broken. I actually had an old Klaus build from before I started the channel. Back then, there was always something missing, and I found out what that thing was. It's our closest brother, Ben. Level 1 summoners gain an Eidolon, which is basically a second character you control with some restrictions. You both share an HP pool, skill proficiencies, spell proficiencies, actions, and multiple attack penalty. You can manifest or unmanifest them to anywhere within 100 feet as a 3-action activity. You can see through their senses instead of your own, and you basically get a 4th action through Act Together, letting either you or your Eidolon perform a 1 to 3 action activity, then the other performs a single action activity. Ben is a ghost with a tentacle monster trapped in his stomach, so we'll have him be a devotion phantom, specifically a stalwart guardian. We gain the dutiful retaliation reaction, so Ben can make a strike against an enemy who strikes us as long as he's within 15 feet. The tentacles are long, but they aren't that long. But they are strong, so we're taking the advanced weaponry evolution feat to give one of Ben's unarmed attacks the grapple trait. We also get link spells, which are focus spells that can make our Eidolon that much better. Evolution Surge can give our Eidolon one of a bunch of different traits from a list on page 144 of the Secrets of Magic book. Nothing super in character on the list, so season to taste at your table obviously. And a link cantrip boost Eidolon to give your Eidolon a +2 status bonus to damage rolls with its unarmed attacks, scaling with our striking runes. Devotion Phantom Summoners also gain occult cantrips and first level spells. Mage Hand lets us move an unattended object slowly. Telekinetic Projectile lets us move an unattended object quickly, launching it as a spell attack roll, dealing 1d6 plus our charisma modifier of bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. Wash Your Luck cancels out an active misfortune effect on your next skill check. Infectious Enthusiasm to gain a +1 status bonus to our choice of attack rolls, will saves, or charisma based checks for 1 round. And an ally who saw us cast this can spend an action to gain the same bonus on their turn. And we know Animate Dead to manifest an undead creature that isn't Ben as our minion that we can sustain for up to 1 minute. We'll take Magical Understudy to give Ben the ability to cast spells too. After all, he has his own powers and he helps as much as he can, considering most of the time he's basically intangible. Guidance gives a creature within 30 feet a +1 status bonus on their choice of their next attack roll, perception check, saving throw, or skill check, and read the air to make a society recall knowledge check about the immediate social situation and gain a +1 bonus on our next diplomacy check to make an impression during the current social encounter. Technically, Ben wouldn't be the one talking to other people directly for now, but maybe this is Ben giving Klaus a bit of silent insight. But that's dependent on GM fiat, obviously. For our skill feat, Bon mot lets us make a diplomacy check against a target's will DC, giving the target a -2 penalty to perception and will saves, and a -3 if our one-liner was particularly brutal, but we get the -2 penalty instead if we put our foot in our mouth. Level 3 summoners gain unlimited signature spells, meaning every spell we know can be freely heightened to any spell level we have access to. Shared vigilance to give our Eidolon and ourself expert perception proficiency, and we also gain second level spells. Summoner's Precaution gives us a reaction that we can use whenever our Eidolon would take damage that would reduce our HP to 0. Instead of taking the damage, we instantly unmanifest our Eidolon, but we cannot summon them again for 1 minute. We take the Die Hard feat to die at dying 5 rather than dying 4. We may go down easily, but we always get back up even when we aren't trying to. The Concealing Legerdemain feat lets us use our Thievery skill to conceal an object on our person instead of stealth, since we're not trained in that at all. We don't exactly seek out spirits to talk to. We've honestly spent half our life avoiding almost all of them entirely, but the Ghost Hunter dedication still gives us a few more things we need, like training in spirit lore and even more occult cantrips. We have Join Paths to join in mental communion with a willing spirit, or any creature really, to automatically gain the benefit of their aid on our next recall knowledge check. Sometimes ghosts are insightful, we just need to get past our fear of them, and they just need to not talk all at once. Level 5 summoners gain Eidolon Unarmed Expertise to give our Eidolon expert unarmed attacks, and we gain 3rd level spell slots but lose our 1st level spell slots. We can still cast those spells, we just need to use a higher slot for them. Bind Undead lets us gain control of one undead creature for a day or until we or an ally performs a hostile action against it. For our Ancestry feat, Martial Experience gives us proficiency bonus equal to our level for all weapons we're untrained in, courtesy of that sporadic trip to the Vietnam War. And at level 11, we'll gain training in all weapons, so we don't care about that proficiency bonus as much anymore since it gets included in normal weapon training. We get essentially our entire gimmick with Graves' Voice to use our Spirit Lore to make an impression and to request things of incorporeal creatures. We'll take the Glad Hand feat so we don't have to spend the usual 1 minute of conversation before we can attempt to make an impression with a creature. Technically, this only applies to diplomacy checks to make an impression, but if I was your GM, I'd let this count towards your Spirit Lore checks to make an impression too, since spirits are people too. Level 7 Devotion Phantoms gain Eidolon Weapon Specialization for an extra 2 flat damage on our Eidolon's expert unarmed attacks, and Steadfast Devotion for a +2 circumstance bonus to saving throws against mental effects and critical success results on regular successes. And level 7 Summoners gain 4th level spell slots, giving up their 2nd level spell slots in the process. Glibness gives us a +4 status bonus to Deception checks to lie and against Perception checks to discern if we're telling the truth. And for our general feat, Fast Recovery lets us reduce the stage of ongoing poisons and diseases by 2 on a successful Fortitude save and by 3 for a critical success. We also reduce our Drain condition by 2 instead of 1 on a night's rest, and we recover twice the usual amount of hit points from resting. We've been ignoring Ben for a few levels to focus on becoming a better Seance, but we'll get back in the swing of things with Magical Adept to give our Eidolon a 1st and 2nd level spell slot, and every even level our Eidolon gains a higher level spell slot, but they lose their lowest level spell slot. Grim Tendrils forces a Fortitude save in a 30-foot line, dealing 2d4 negative damage and 1 persistent bleeding damage to each living creature who fails, and Vomit Swarm to force a Reflex save in a 30-foot cone, dealing 2d8 piercing damage and inflicting the sickened 1 condition. While that's going on, we have Lengthy Diversion to remain hidden until the end of our next turn after we critically succeed on a created diversion action instead of becoming observed like normal. Level 9 Summoners gain Shared Reflexes, so we and our Eidolon gain Expert Reflex saves, and we're an Expert Spellcaster who can cast 5th level spells. Invoke Spirits forces will saves in a 10-foot burst, dealing 2d4 mental damage and 2d4 negative damage to each living creature, forcing creatures who critically fail to become frightened 2 and flee for 1 round. In addition, we can sustain the spell for up to a minute, moving the area up to 30 feet, forcing the same saves on any creatures in the new area. For our Ancestry feat, Pinch Time lets us cast Haste once per day as an innate arcane spell to gain an additional action for 10 rounds that we can use for a strike or stride. Or let Ben use it, you guys pretty much share everything already after all. At level 10, our Eidolon can cast a 3rd level spell. Dream Message can send a minute-long speech to a creature we know by name and have met in person via a dream. We'll take the Constricting Hold evolution feat so Ben can put the squeeze on our enemies, letting him deal his strength modifier of damage with a basic Fortitude save against a creature he's grabbed or restrained. And for our skill feat, we gain our cult following with Entourage to gain a number of followers who'll hang around in any safe locations we visit. This may not be the smartest bunch, but they have their uses. We can use them to buy stuff on our behalf and reduce the time it takes us to gather information even further, down to 30 minutes. And we also gain a +1 bonus to the diplomacy check to do so. Probably won't be able to bring them when we inevitably time travel again though, sorry. Level 11 summoners gain simple weapon expertise for expert proficiency in simple weapons and unarmed attacks, twin juggernauts for master fortitude saves and critical success results on regular successes, and Eidolon defensive expertise to increase our Eidolon's proficiency in unarmored defense to expert. We also gain 6 level spells, Zero Gravity turns off the effects of gravity, and a 20-foot radius 40-foot tall cylinder that we can sustain for up to a minute, forcing everyone within the float, and creatures who aren't able to fly are only able to move by pushing off of a nearby surface. For our general feat, Numb to Death lets us regain additional hit points equal to our level when we gain hit points for the first time each day while dying, and we also don't increase our wounded condition when we do so. At level 12, our Eidolon can cast 4th level spells, Call the Blood streams blood from a living creature, dealing 8d4 negative damage based on a fortitude save. If we deal any damage at all, we take some of the blood into us, becoming sickening 2, since for some reason phantoms technically aren't undead. We'll take the Grasping Limbs evolution feat to give our Eidolon's unarmed attack the grab ability from the bestiary, meaning if our last action was a successful strike or we have a creature grappled already, we can spend an action to automatically grab our target until the end of our next turn, it escapes, or we move away from it. So we don't necessarily need a high athletics modifier to grab creatures anymore, but we still need it to be high to make it harder for them to escape, since that's usually going to be against our athletics DC. For our skill feat, Klaus can entangle enemies just as well with his words. The Evangelize feat lets us spend an action to attempt a diplomacy check against the target's will DC, giving them Stupefied 1 if we succeed and Stupefied 2 if we critically succeed. Level 13 summoners gain weapon specialization for an additional flat 2 damage on our expert weapon attacks, defensive robes for expert unarmored defense, and Eidolon unarmed mastery to give our Eidolon master proficiency in unarmed attacks. We also gain 7th level spells. Retrocognition lets us read the psychic and spiritual imprints of an area, seeing impressions and feeling the emotions of prior events, reaching back further in time as we heighten the spell. For our ancestry feat, Bounce Back lets us ignore increasing or gaining the wounded condition once per day when we recover from dying as a free action. So we have 2 instances of this, just in case we have a long day and a lot of fights ahead of us. At level 14, our Eidolon can cast 5th level spells. Black Tentacles summons a horde of tentacles in a 20-foot burst that lasts a minute that make a spell attack roll against the fortitude DCs of all creatures within the area, dealing 3d6 bludgeoning damage and grabbing any creatures we hit. In addition, at the end of any grabbed creature's turn, the tentacles deal an additional 1d6 bludgeoning damage to them. We've got unmistakable lore, so we can no longer critically fail recall knowledge attempts in any lore skill we have training in, and we also gain additional information than normal whenever we critically succeed on a recall knowledge check using our spirit lore, since we have master proficiency in dealing with the dearly departed. We're also better at manifesting those undead as well. Master Summoner lets us designate one of our spell slots to perform 2 castings of a single summon or incarnate spell of that level, so we basically have an extra spell slot as long as 2 of those spells are animate dead. Level 15 summoners gain shared resolve to give ourselves and our Eidolon master will saves and critical success results on regular successes, and greater Eidolon specialization for 6 flat damage on our Eidolon's master unarmed attacks. We also gain 8th level spells, and honestly none of them are really in character for us. Maybe Uncontrollable Dance to lighten the mood around here a bit, but you've got plenty of spells that heighten really well too. For our general feat, A Home in Every Port lets us spend 8 hours to secure a room and board for a full day at no charge in any decently sized village or settlement thanks to our status as a legendary prophet. At level 16, our Eidolon gains a 6th level spell slot. Spirit Blast forces a fortitude save on a creature, dealing 16d6 force damage directly to that creature's spirit or the creature possessing them if they happen to be possessed. We'll take the Effortless Concentration feat to sustain an ongoing spell as a free action once per day, meaning we can potentially have been manifested and 2 undead summoned at a single time. For our skill feat, Titan Wrestler lets Ben grapple, disarm, shove, and trip creatures up to 3 sizes larger than us. Technically we can too, but he's the one with the max strength modifier. Level 17 Devotion Phantom Eidolons gain their Transcendence ability, Devotion Aura. We can reduce the damage any allies within 20 feet of our Eidolon would take by an amount equal to our Eidolon's Constitution modifier, and we take half that amount of damage instead. Ben loves his siblings even though he can't always show it. We're also a master spellcaster who can cast 9th level spells. Voracious Gestalt whips area spirits into a powerful entity that we can sustain for up to a minute, forcing a fortitude save on any number of creatures in a 30-foot emanation, dealing 14d6 negative damage, and if they end their turn within the area, they also take an additional 66 damage based on a fortitude save. In addition, at the end of each turn during the duration, if we killed a creature, we add their soul to the Gestalt, increasing the emanation by 20 feet and increasing the damage by 1d6. For our ancestry feat, we'll take Magic Rider, so whenever we're included in a teleport spell, probably courtesy of our brother 5, that spell can target an additional person, which technically we wouldn't need to bring an Eidolon, I don't believe, but I've been counting Ben as a separate person this whole time anyway. We can also increase the accuracy of the teleport spell so we land no more than 1 mile from our target's destination. We definitely all landed in that alley and there were no issues or repercussions whatsoever. At level 18, our Eidolon can cast 7th level spells. Possession is really a power that Ben only has thanks to his status as a manifested dead person. We can send our mind and our soul into a target, potentially gaining sporadic or total control over a target for 1 minute based on a will save. Honestly, I don't know exactly how this would work considering it's an Eidolon casting the spell, but it's too accurate to pass up. We'll pick up Magical Master so Ben gains all of his lower level spell slots back, meaning ironically, he can actually cast more spells than we can, even with our double summon slot, so that's cool. For our skill feat, Shameless Request reduces the increase in DC for making an outrageous request by 2, and the lowest result we can gain is a failure, meaning our target's disposition towards us won't decrease. Level 19 summoners gain instant manifestation to manifest our Eidolon in a single action instead of as a 3-action activity, and Eidolon defensive mastery to increase our Eidolon's proficiency in unarmored defense to master proficiency. For our general feat, we'll take Feather Step so we can step in difficult terrain. Nothing worse than taking an opportunity attack just because you want to move while you're in a room with a slippery floor. For our final skill feat, Legendary Negotiation lets us spend 3 actions to make an impression and request an enemy to just stop fighting and maybe talk about our problems for a bit. But if that doesn't work out, our capstone feat Legendary Summoner lets us sacrifice our 9th level spell slots in favor of 2 10th level spell slots that we can only spend for some max level animate deads for some 15th level spooks and specters. But now that we're level 20, let's go over the pros and cons of this build. For starters, our Eidolon is a CC machine, unarmed attacks that can grab without a separate attack roll, and black tentacles that can grab multiple enemies in one go. Second, since we can summon even more undead helpers, we can essentially guarantee flanking for Ben to do his grapple thing. And last, we have an insane 9 cantrips prepared at any given moment, meaning we've got a lot of utility and bonuses we can just give the team, even if that team is just us and a couple random ghosts we found wandering around. For cons, we've got a lot of sustained spells, which is a good idea since that means we can get a bit more bang for our buck out of our smaller pool of spell slots, but that means we'll probably be using at least 2 actions every turn sustaining spells. Resource management isn't really a negative per se, but if you're trying to live with as few attachments as possible like Klaus, then this build might be a little too much micromanagement for your enjoyment. Thanks for tuning in to another build. Join the Patreon or check out the Gumroad to gain access to this character sheet and a whole lot of others. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and play more Pathfinder.